So this video is to go over the intern expectations for your spring internship. So first of all, let's talk about communication expectations. First of all, they need to be timely and professional. So make sure that you're checking your email and text during appropriate times. Uh, set a time aside. If it's a planning time, that would be considered an appropriate time before school begins, because a lot of times things might be sent, especially from me, the night before, or I schedule send to have it go out early in the morning. After school's is over is always a good time to check your text or your emails. Um, Briefly at lunch, you want to make sure that you're, you know, communicating and enjoying yourself and having a little downtime. At lunch is sometimes a good time for that, but just to check it throughout the day. Um, you would not be checking it during class, even if it buzzes. I realize that in this day and age, a lot of teachers have their cell phones on their body because they might use it for the timer. They might use it for other pieces. That's a conversation to have with your teacher. So keeping that in mind, be very specific with questions and information. You don't need to write a novel if you are sending an email. Um, However, don't use so many shortened versions of words in text that it's not understandable. So it's an expectation of all interns that you won't be on your phone during instruction. Now, again, if you're using your phone as a timer, that's different. Although I would highly suggest that to see if your teacher has a timer in the classroom, just like we have in our classrooms in Irwin. Also, not when students are in the class. This is just something we don't want you to be doing. In the event of an illness, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a few minutes, you need to email or text all the people who are on your team. So that would be your mentor teacher or teachers who are you are currently with at the time, and your college supervisor. So if you are rotating and you're only with one of your teachers for so many weeks, it would be that mentor teacher and me as your college supervisor. Don't piecemeal and do separate emails or text, just do it all in one text or email. So let's talk really briefly about professionalism. This is something at this stage in your program that you should pretty much know, but I want to clarify some things. So you are expected to be at the school at the same time that your teacher normally shows up or earlier. Some teachers, they show up right before the bell. So that is really not getting you off as an intern. Um, and this is no way or shape demeaning or belittling how your teacher shows up or their attendance. Excuse me. However, you have a lot of things that you have to do. So if they come in with only 5-10 minutes before school starts, depends on their contract time, and it's perfectly normal and fine. But you should probably be there as early as you can so that you can get prepared and be ready. That will just help you as you're teaching. Do not make appointments during the school day unless you are ill, and then I would highly suggest that you do make an appointment with health and wellness and make sure that you're getting checked out. Um, because in this semester, you are only going to be missing inlet if you are running a fever, um, and you should expect to see a doctor. This is just sort of the way that education is. I'm not telling you to go if you are deathly ill, if you're vomiting, have other stomach issues, or you're running a fever. That definitely is not a time that you want to be around other kids or other people. They don't want to catch your cooties. So just make sure that if you have a little sniffle or a little cold or you're just tired, you need to get up, you need to go take some vitamin C, whatever it takes, but get a lot of rest. You're going to need it this semester. So that would be the only time that you would make a doctor's appointment or any kind of appointment during the school day without prior approval from me, or if it's something for some reason you'd have to do for an instructor, you also need to run it by me as well. In the event that you are ill, and I mentioned this before, you're going to email everyone on the team as soon as you've made this decision. So sometimes you wake up in the middle of the night, you know it's not going to change, or you have taken all the medication you have and nothing's getting better. So you know you're going to have to go to health and wellness. Go ahead and when you make that decision, write the email. You can schedule it to be sent. If you don't know how to do that, please see me and I can show you how to do that. You are responsible for providing subplans to your mentor teacher or teachers if you are absent. So even if something were to happen in week 3 when you're transitioning into the lead role, and we'll talk about that a little bit in a few minutes, you still, if you are teaching an area, content area, or a period, you are responsible for making those subplans, even for the mentor teacher. Okay, so that's very important to remember. You just don't say, "Oh, I'm sick. You can take over again." That's not how that works. So, dress and presenting yourselves. Again, you guys have been out in the um, in the schools from day 1 of your program, but you're still under Marietta College expectations. But I do get questions about this, especially this semester. You want to continue to dress professionally. Um, you are encouraged, highly encouraged, as a matter of fact, to wear spirit wear. If Fridays are jeans and schools, t-shirts, sweatshirts, if you want to and you want to purchase their spirit wear, talk to your mentor teachers. They probably will let you know how to get a hold of that. Sometimes they might even be nice enough, they'll give you some, but obviously don't ask to have it given to you. But participate in fun activities as well. So if they have a week of, crazy hair day, one day, you know, pajama day, be very, very appropriate and talk to your teacher ahead of time to make sure that they're also participating. So again, if it's appropriate and it is something that the school is sort of encouraging the students to do, talk to your mentor teachers first, but I highly suggest that you participate. Make sure that you keep a professional relationship with your teachers. Sometimes uh, Sometimes it's forgotten in working so closely together that they are evaluating you. That doesn't mean you cannot have a friendly relationship. It doesn't mean that you can't get close to your mentor teachers. However, um, some things to remember is that you're not friends with them. You're not friends with your students, so you want to keep those boundaries. But with your teachers, you also want to make sure that you're not sharing personal things. That is part of the EDAs that you are. EDAs are the professional responsibilities on the CPAST. Um, Another thing that I would highly, highly suggest that you not do is do not friend, follow, or engage on social media with your students, with the parents of your students, or mentor teachers. If you have done this prior, or you did this in the fall, this needs to go on the back burner and not happen during your internship. Again, we don't want to blur the lines of the responsibilities and the, excuse me, the roles of everybody in this team. So just keep that in mind. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. So lesson plan expectations, preparedness. You should have all copies, all materials. This would include any um, manipulatives. You have to have that ready before you leave the day before. So if you're teaching something on Monday, you need to have all of your copies made on the Friday previous or prior. Do not wait until Monday, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Um, well, we're going to talk about it right now. Copiers are your friends when you're not in a rush and when you have planned things out. And that might seem like it's the same thing, and it really is. Um, Copiers are not your friends all the time. Copiers break down. Copiers get jammed. And again, clarify with your mentor teacher, who do I need to contact if I'm making copies and something happens? Um, Also, you may have 5 or 6 other teachers who have decided they're going to make copies on Monday morning. You may not get into the queue in time to have your materials before you get to your class. So always, always have all your materials prepared prior the day before, or in the case of a Monday, you have it ready on Friday. As far as if you are a wellness major, make sure that you at least know what materials that you're going to need to equipment that you're going to need to have prepared for the lesson. Um, and knowing where it is, you don't want to be trying to hunt it down or find it right before the lesson starts. Okay. So weekly lesson plans. Your first weekly lesson plans will be due for the third week, week 3 of January 19th in Canvas. And you'll turn those in on Friday, the 16th by 11:59. Now, use your mentoring teacher's method of weekly lesson plans, and I'll show you an example in a minute. All weekly lesson plans are due on the Friday prior to the week of instruction. So these are different than the lesson plans that you will write out when you're being observed. These types of lesson plans are honestly just what they're called. They're the whole week and what you're planning out for all the periods or content areas or the time that you're with the kiddos the entire day, Monday through Friday. Um, so let's see, your weekly lesson plans reflect your teaching for the week. You may combine, okay, that's just for wellness. But again, sorry, I didn't take that out. That's not really relevant to everyone. But um, again, and we'll talk about transitioning, you may not do the entire Monday through Friday, all the lessons on week 3. Although if you are participating in the planning process, it's okay to add that. Just make sure to clearly mark what you're teaching. So here's an example. And again, it does not need to look like this. Ask your mentoring teacher, how do you do your weekly plans? This is bare minimum, obviously. Um, but don't just put, like, for instance, math, page 20 in the workbook. At least put the concept of the skill you're working on. Okay, so this is very different than a full-blown lesson plan, like I said before, but it needs to be clear what you're doing in each time slot. And it may look different depending on what your mentor teacher does. Okay. Um, so with that being said, let's move on to the observed lesson plan. This happens once a week. The times that I am available to observe are Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Let's see. Mondays and Wednesdays, I do teach a class from 8 to 8:50, but there will be a link for you to always click on and schedule. You can schedule ahead. Just be prepared if things change that you have to go in there and you have to, delete the original and reschedule. But again, that will reflect I won't be available to probably observe anybody until 9, probably at the earliest. Well, actually not 9, probably 9:30, and even later if you are outside the county. Observations are first come, first serve. That's why you need to be thinking ahead. And if you know, uh, you know, pretty earlier on in the week prior, what day you're going to be teaching, schedule it. You don't have to have the lesson plan done to schedule the actual observation. So these have to be scheduled by the Thursday prior to the week of the observation. And I'll show you the lesson plan when it's actually due, depending on when you're teaching. But the Thursday prior for scheduling is very important to remember. If I am not there, if for some reason something were to come up and I can't make it, be prepared to record it. So a lot of you will be checking out swivels to record your EdTPAs. Just hang on to those for the semester. You can turn them in at the end. Um, and that actually something you might want to, you know, check out earlier than just for your EdTPA because you're going to want to practice with it. But that way you're always prepared to record a lesson if you need to. Because rescheduling sometimes just becomes a really big problem. And I don't want you to have to redo a full-blown lesson plan just so that I can see you. So that's why just always be prepared to record. So here's an example of when you're going to submit your observed lesson plans. The deadline is not going to, I wanted to have some type of reminder for you. So I believe all the lesson plan deadlines in Canvas is going to show up as Friday. But this is what, and you can do that if you want to, but the only less observed day that you have to turn it in on Friday by 11:59 p.m. is the Monday. If you have scheduled for me to observe you on a Monday, I have to have that lesson plan by Friday. If you're teaching on a Wednesday, you can submit it on the Monday that's previous, so 2 days before. And Friday, you can turn it in on Tuesday. But that's the absolute latest that you can turn those in, okay? Observed lesson plans. What template do I use? Well, all content lessons are completed on the approved or on a approved Marietta College lesson plan template. There's a couple that are approved. If you feel comfortable after doing your practice on a specific template, that's perfect. It needs to be a Marietta College template, but you can go ahead and use that. Now, PE lessons are completed in a PE lesson template. So if you are a wellness major, you'll want to use that. You can find all of these templates in Canvas. So if you have any questions or you get in there and you're like, well, this isn't what I've used, what you're providing, just reach out. Okay. So observed lessons. The first lesson that I will observe, because you will have taken over some of the teaching, will be in week 3. So January 19th through the 23rd. You're going to be provided written feedback. As I observe, I type in feedback as I watch. You'll also be required to meet with me. Now, you can meet me after the lesson. Let's say you're teaching something right before they go to lunch or right before they go, or you have a planning period or whatever. If there is a time uh, that's very convenient, it's not going to, I don't want you to like have the mentor teacher. You need to teach because I need to meet with Dr. Craig. That is not what I'm saying here. But we can meet in person right after you teach if there's a natural break. If not, just find an alternative time. This could be an evening, it could be right after school, but usually I do those on Zoom. Okay, so you will have to be letting me know, and I will have a link in Canvas that you can just click on at the time that we decide. All right. So observations and the expectations I have for them. So I need you to have the observed lesson plans turned in to Canvas by 11:59 p.m. There will be a table in Canvas that will show you, just like I showed you before in a slide, of when it's actually due. Um, I expect you to have a printed copy of the lesson plan and your materials, and those will be provided to me when I get there. You might want to also be thinking about, because I always ask, where do you want me? So have a spot for me ready. And that way I'm not interrupting anything. I just can go where I need to go. There will be printed copies where I am. The reason that I like those, or that I require that those be provided to me, is that if you are adjusting your lesson, I can see that you've adjusted it because it's not exactly what your lesson plan is showing. And this leads me to something that happens a lot of the times. Pacing gets off because interns don't really check their lesson plans. They create the lesson plan, but then they don't look at it again. I would highly suggest that you have, especially at the beginning, you have your lesson plan out for you to reference because you will be creating a pacing for how you're chunking that lesson. And I want to see all of those pieces that you've planned, and you can't always get them in if you're not pacing. So that's why you need to also use it as a resource for yourself. Please begin your lesson promptly. Don't wait for me. There have been very rarely, but there have been times where I've got stuck in traffic or something has happened because I'm going between schools and I'm going to end up being late. Don't wait around for me. Okay, just go ahead. If I have to come in late, again, that's why if you have all the stuff ready for me and I know where I'm supposed to be, I can go in and try to be not interrupt as much as possible. And I can see as much as the lesson as I can. So don't ever wait for me. Um, and don't be waiting on your phone. And I will try to get a hold of you if I possibly can. But again, just keep teaching. It's up to me to be there on time. What do I need to do after? So I will be emailing you the feedback from the observations. Usually I get those by the same day. Sometimes I will even email it as before I even leave the room. Um, so read over that. You're going to respond to the reflection piece at the bottom and submit it in Canvas for that week. Then you're going to schedule a weekly debrief with me. Or if you have that natural break that I spoke about just earlier, we can meet and have that conversation. You're still going to fill out a reflection and submit it, but we have to talk face to face, and it can be virtual or it can be right after you taught the lesson. So evaluation expectations. The CPAST, which is an acronym for Candidate Pre-Service Assessment of Student Teaching. You're going to revisit the consensus score sheet from the fall. If you didn't get that, let me know and I'll reach out to whoever was checking in on you in the fall. And you're going to set 2 priority goals for the first 3 weeks. It's important that you have those, and probably you were already asked to set those goals. Use the rubric when you're guiding to guide yourself as you're planning. So the CPAS is broken up into planning, instruction, assessment, and then the professional responsibilities. So make sure that you're looking at what do I need to make sure that I'm doing when I'm planning? Okay. Those are things too. I didn't mention this before, but share your lesson plans with your teachers because they're also assessing you on your planning. I'm actually seeing those lessons, but they're not secrets, and share those with your teachers, if not weekly, at least a few times so that they do see that you're planning. Um, use the CPAST to document those things to show evidence. So you could have a separate sheet and just the look for, which you'll have access to all of that before you start. It'll show you different kinds of ways that you can collect evidence. So make sure that you're writing this down so that when we meet at the midterm and the final, you have examples of when you have met this or the different criteria under one of the pieces of the CPAS. All right, so the EDAs, these are old news. You guys have done these forever. Again, go back to the consensus form and set at least one from the EDA, even if you got all twos. maybe there's one piece of criteria or criterion under one of the dispositions that you want to work on, that you want to improve on. So use your scores from the fall. Also, if you did have ones, maybe your consensus scores were all twos, but you did have ones, again, use that data to guide your goals for the first part of the semester. And again, especially if you are setting a goal, whether it's the EDAs or the CPAS, you need to annotate to show progress. It's not just, I think I did it, I set a goal, so I think I did it. Make sure that you're actually progress monitoring yourself. The consensus meetings, we will have a midterm, just like we did in the fall. Those will be scheduled the week of February 16th through the 20th. Again, you may not have a lot of say with the date and time because you're there anyway. It's more that we want to have everybody there. So all the stakeholders will be there. Now, if you are only with one of your mentors, like let's say you split the semester up in half. If you're only with one, we will work out how the scoring will go with the person that you haven't been with. So you're going to be, and you'll have a reminder of this from Canvas, but EDA and CPAS scores will be due from you in SLL no later than February 2nd. So the final consensus meeting will be the week of April 20th through the 24th. This is technically week 16 in the semester. Again, all the stakeholders need to be there. And then your deadline for getting your scores in SLL will be April 3rd. Okay, so let's talk about transitioning. First of all, you want to transition to the lead role. Because you were there in the fall, this will go very fast. So the first week, you want to take over all the housekeeping duties. So this could be attendance. It could be making copies for your teacher, anything like that, any of those housekeeping things. You may have already done some of this stuff in the fall. So week 1, that's the very least thing that you need to be doing in all areas. If you are in a middle school setting and you have several periods, you're doing this every time. You're not just doing it every once in a while, you're doing it every time. You're going to take over at least one content area or period and plan and teach Monday through Friday. So, for instance, if you're at the elementary level, you may take over math calendar and the lesson. You might do the writing out of the ELA block. If you are in a middle school setting, you might do at least one period. Like I'm going to do period 3 the whole week, Monday through Friday. Okay. This doesn't mean your teacher and you can't decide, I'm doing more than that. That's perfectly fine to do it faster because you've had the whole fall semester to get to know a lot of your students. Again, it can go a little slower, but that's going to be on individual basis. And this is just a suggestion. Like I said, some of your teachers will say, oh, you can do more than that. Week 2, you're going to do all the things that you had for week 1, plus you're going to take over more of the content areas or periods Monday through Friday. Remember, your goal is you're transitioning to the lead role. Okay, so planning and teaching for half of the content areas or periods in the day. And then week 3, everything you did prior, but you're now taking over the complete role all day. Okay. This does not mean you can't co-teach. It doesn't mean that your mentor teacher will not be in the room and might not jump in to add something or, you're teaching and you might say, hey, Mrs. Smith, how does this normally, you could bring them in, it's okay to do that. They're there to mentor you, and those teachers know they're not going to just leave the room on week 3 and you're never going to see them again until you transition out. Transitioning from the lead role is just as important as you don't just do everything on Friday up to Friday, and then the next Monday you're not doing anything. So transitioning on week roughly 13 and 14. And the reason I said this is because everyone that I'm supervising this semester, your spring breaks fall on weeks 13 or 14. So you're going to want to sort of think this through, have those conversations with your mentor teachers. But you're going to begin giving your mentor teacher back the lead role. So in week 13 or 14, depending on when your spring break is, you're going to go backwards. So you'll give them back about half of the planning and teaching of the day or the content areas, Monday through Friday. But you'll continue those housekeeping duties. You're going to still support your teacher. So attendance, making copies, etc. So whoops, I did not change that on this screen. Did I not change it? Sorry, it should be from lead role, so I apologize for that. So on week 15, you want to continue again supporting your teacher. You are there the whole week. So attendance, making copies, etc. But you will fully be supporting. You will not be teaching, like taking the lead role. You could do co-teaching, definitely. So I'm not expecting you to just to sit in the back of the room and do nothing. Sometimes this is a good time for if there's other people in other staff members or teachers in the building that your mentor teacher may say, you need to go watch them do this. This is a perfect time to do that. Again, having those conversations with your mentor teacher prior to this week so that you know how it's going to look. And these are suggested transitioning to and from the lead role. So what do you need to do right now? So the whole 50-50 time is not a Dr. Craig thing. It is the state of Ohio thing. So my role as your college supervisor, as well as other college supervisors, is to make sure that you have 50-50 or 50% of your student teaching experience in each area. So, if you are, I'm going to give you an example that I don't think actually is relevant to anybody, but it's good to know. If you are on a team that has multiple teachers, let's say even at the elementary level, one teacher teaches math, another teacher is teaching ELA, that is still considered general education. So that means that between those two, you have 50% of your time. The IS, or in Wood County, special education teacher, you have to have 50% of the time. And a lot of times your mentor teachers, in the instance or example I gave, may say, well, I'm not seeing them as much. Well, the state doesn't, differentiate that math is separate and taught by a separate person than ELA. It's still considered gen ed. So keep that in mind. Again, I'm here to support you. So if there's any issues, just make sure that you're reaching out to me and I can advocate for you. So begin the first week of your internship under the schedule. So you should have had at your final consensus meeting a conversation about what will my spring semester look like? What will the schedule look like? And this is not like by any means, we don't have like a template schedule that you have to follow. We really have teams tailor their schedules based on the team and how it's set up. So that should be something that you're coming in to the spring at least with some idea. Please let me know ASAP if you do not have a plan in place for a schedule, because that's really important to have that coming in to this semester. There is a form that it's the internship program form. I'm going off the top of my head and I can't remember the title of it, but it basically has all the contact information. I'll be sending that out to people and you'll fill it in. And there's a spot for you to actually fill in your schedule. So it doesn't mean that just because it's written down in a form that it can't change. We want to be flexible, and sometimes things come up or we realize, this looked good on paper, but it's not really working. So if you were to have something, if you were having rotations, because some interns will divide their day in half or even period by period. It's really, like I said, it's very unique and tailored to the intern. So just make sure you're communicating any changes. The last thing you need to do is scan this QR code. It basically is saying that you read through everything, you did go through Canvas, um, and then you sign or you write your name, and that's an electronic signature, and then you are finished with understanding my expectations and sort of the rigmarole of what you need to do for the spring. If you have any questions, you know where to reach me, you know how to get a hold of me, and please don't hesitate to do.